Hey there! We have some exciting changes coming to our Patreon, and we are just about ready to announce them, or we have announced them already. Who knows? Go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv to see some of the exciting changes, and we really appreciate your support if you have given or if you are considering giving. Now let us listen to your thoughts on Nioh.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is an Imperialist favorite.
Yeah. And this week we are reading your responses to Nioh. Huge thanks to Mai Sinclair for guesting with us on the main episode. But here for the appendix is just the two of us.
Yeah, and I'm on a little bit of a time crunch, and a lot of people responded, so we're going to go ahead and get started right away here. Yeah. I'll get us started here with Patrick by Contact. Patrick said, I know gank bosses are par for the course in these games, but can I please reserve a special spot in hell for whoever thought the endgame mission to fight Nobunaga and the Ice Lady at the same time was a good idea? These are two of the most punishing 1v1 bosses in the game, but nope, definitely fight them both at the same time. Also, Raven Tengu are bad. Thank you.
Yep, I never got to a Raven Tengu, so that
I saw them. I looked up a bunch of the enemies, and it's like, yeah, I can see it. Yeah. The boss rush, which we in the main episode we went through really quickly because we didn't do it, but I did watch it online, and did seem too much.
Yeah,
for me, pretty definitively.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Christopher writes via Contact saying, I love Nioh because it makes me smile for hour after hour, 200 hours and counting. I love the crafting system, the boss fights, and the different multiplayer modes, and of course, the near endless build variety. The DLC is pretty great too, since it expands mechanics and builds on them instead of just giving you new spaces to explore. Nioh is a difficult game, and I am not particularly good at the combat. I am pretty good at researching and improving my build, though, and this gets me through the tougher portions.
Yeah.
Shoring up player skill with avatar skill.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which I can see. It's kind of weird because, as we mentioned in the last episode, I feel like I kind of had the opposite problem.
Yeah.
With it, for where I got, again, not a weird brag, but it was more that my player skill for where I was at was adequate to where improving my avatar was not exciting for me.
Yeah.
But I could see it going either way with that for sure. Casper says via Contact, I know that my perspective on this game is unusual. I'm a mega fan of the Soulsborne games and have played all of them multiple times, but I'm also a professor of Japanese studies. I teach and do research on the historical period of the 16th and 17th centuries that Nioh's supernatural story takes place in, and the developers nailed it. The characters, locations, and map are perfect. I never thought my secret hobby of bashing myself against bosses again and again, and my professional world of Sengoku Japanese history would meet. I'm so glad they did.
Yeah. I think they have.
Me too. I'm happy that happened. What a great thing.
Yeah. I think Team Ninja has a picture of you up on their wall. They chose you as their their persona.
Do it for her. The Simpsons.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love it when something is just made for one person.
Oh yeah. It's right up the alley. Yeah. Edward writes via Contact, I absolutely loved Nioh. It was a game designed with my specific tastes in mind. It feels good to play and experiment with, and can offer a kooky amount of numbers going up customization. That said, my liking the game does not make it flawless. In fact, some days I even think it is outright bad. 2 bosses able to one-shot from off-camera sucks. Gear can make the relatively modular difficulty obsolete as well. The story only exists to be skipped. Yikes. That is their yikes, not mine. That said, this game is totally comfort food. I would like to see some of the good things from this in other games. Seriously, though, please ditch the bad. Yep, instant kills. Don't do it.
No good, yeah. And this is kind of what I was talking about when I was saying how, even though I'm looking forward to never saying or hearing the word Nioh again in my life, the Nioh 2 might change that.
Yeah.
Right. So if there is a version of that where they learn some of those lessons, it'll be a real kind of articulation point for this franchise for me, where it's like, do they feel like they made a flawless thing, or do they feel like, hey, there's room for improvement and we can, we can make this better?
It would almost have to be a Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect 2 thing, though. They would need to lose some of the bloat. Like a sequel to this that expanded on the systems would just be death to me.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, not in a million years. Like I don't want because I mean, that to me, that's one of the flaws. Like it's not to everyone, but like that bloat is a real serious problem, and like I would want that to be pared back. Yeah. Pretty extensively.
Yep.
But yeah, and it's also good. Something can be really, really good and also have flaws. Yeah. Right. So like that, like his, Edward's, reaction to this is very similar to like my reaction to Bloodborne or something like that, where like everyone decided I hated Bloodborne because I recognized those flaws in it. Mm-hmm. But it was just that it was very good, but not perfect. Yeah. And it was that frustration of it not being perfect, like, man, this would be perfect if not for,
Yep.
Robbie says via contact. First time, long time. That is shorthand for this is the first time he's written it. Welcome, Robbie.
Yeah.
I feel like Nioh was a game developed, at least in part, as a reaction to the Souls community. The bosses I faced, note I gave up after the first two, felt needlessly difficult, and like they were trying to communicate to players that no matter how confident one might feel in their Souls acumen, this game will still challenge you. This paired with the rather empty-feeling story, and what is, in my opinion, a lack of interesting lore, made Nioh feel like a game made by people familiar with Souls games, but that missed the mark in what made them special.
Yeah. Different priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that, this as far as like, because we talked a lot about the Souls likes that take one aspect of Soul, or you're just like, this just needs to be crushingly difficult. Mm-hmm. That's what Souls is. Or you look at Let It Die, where it's like Souls is this combat exclusively, like it's more shallow, but for sake of this point, like, but it's not about these kind of vistas and stuff. I think Nioh does a better job than a lot of the games of like trying to articulate more sides of it.
Yeah.
But just adds so much to it. Like it's kind of a different feeling for me than this, where it wasn't like they just took the difficulty. Like I didn't feel like that with Nioh. Right. I felt like it just appended a lot of non-Soul systems onto a thing that ended up being less than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to add to that.
Yeah.
Cameron writes, I love Nioh. When the full game released, I played through it in about a week. I got drawn into it, spending many late nights pushing to do just one more run on a boss. The Diablo-style loot system also hit me really hard, as I am weak to randomly generated loot and usually get really into searching for better gear. The story was a bit convoluted and not incredible, but it was serviceable. I found that the moment-to-moment stories that I made while playing were more memorable. My favorite moment has to be sprinting away from a pair of Oni and attempting to hide in a house, only to be stabbed in the back by an animate umbrella. I laughed hard enough that my cat came to check what was wrong with me. That is obviously a lie. Cats don't care about you.
Yeah, your cat came in to see if you were,
if you were food yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've only just started the DLC, but so far, it's been a satisfying challenge. The game overall was a ton of fun, and I really hope for a sequel exploring another culture's mythology.
That's a fascinating idea.
Yeah.
Like if this, like the idea of it, I mean, it won't be if they do another Nioh, it'll be, probably another side story from this thing, because this is so steeped.
Yeah.
But the idea of some, like a franchise that takes this kind of approach to, cultures around the world.
Yeah.
And that's not me saying like, when's America going to get a chance? Because it's not like Souls is an American culture. It's like it's European.
Yeah,
it's no culture. There's, back in Dark Souls times.
Yeah, exactly.
But but it's based on that kind of mythology, like dragons and knights and stuff. Mm-hmm. It would be really cool to see like, like an African or like a Native American or a Middle Eastern kind of version of this that dealt with that.
Yeah. Or like even in going back into Tecmo Koei's kind of wheelhouse, I don't know an awful lot about Chinese culture or Chinese history. Like I just have the small little bits that I've gotten here and there. Like, I'm more interested in getting exposed to that by osmosis through a character action game than I am through something like another one of Koei's products.
Yeah. Yeah, I would really, me too.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I feel like it needs to be articulated different. Like, I don't like the way that this tells its story.
Yeah.
But I would like the idea of it kind of switching from culture to culture.
Yeah.
That's a really cool idea.
Definitely.
So moving into Mike, who says by contact. Having just bought the PS4 for Bloodborne at Christmas, I decided to add Nioh to my list of games since it was heavily advertised as a Souls-like game. For context, I discovered Dark Souls 3 a year ago and have been playing all the games since then. Thinking of it as a Souls-like, I was disappointed with the game because I consistently compared it to the Dark Souls 3 gameplay. The pace felt different and the loot system was super Diablo. I never felt the need to upgrade my weapons or armor because I knew something better would pop up in my next mission. Once I stopped thinking of it as a Souls-like game, I really started to enjoy it for what it was. It's a fast-paced ARPG that allows you to experiment with a lot of different builds and replay missions to fight bosses again. TLDR, it's a great game, but don't compare it to Dark Souls. It is too late. Don't tell me what to do, Mike.
Yeah. And we went over why we're covering it on the show. Yeah.
For sure. Well, and also, like, I've seen this argument before, too, and and Mike isn't doing this. I'm not ascribing this to Mike. This is for a game that I've spent a lot of time talking about this game. And the one of the things that people will say in answer to, like, criticisms of it will just be like, well, it's not really a Souls-like.
Yeah.
And, like, it plays a lot like Bloodborne to me. Like, it is capable of being played almost exactly like a Souls-like.
Yeah.
So, and it has so many, like, kind of key factors. Like, it's not every key factor. Mm-hmm. It's not 100% a Souls-like, but there's a lot of Souls-like DNA in there. It is as close as anything we've done on the show. Like, it is as close as, maybe slightly less close than, like, Lords of the Fallen to being a Souls-like, but it is closer than most things we've done for the show.
Yeah. It is akin to Lords of the Fallen, except it goes so much further in doing a different kind of thing. But like the basic parts are there. Yeah.
Whereas, like, Lords of the Fallen was slow, clunky Souls with, like, 2 extra systems.
Yeah.
2 or 3 extra systems. This is slow, clunky Souls with, like, a dictionary of extra systems.
Yeah. Yep. Gregory writes, despite the demo selling me on the game, I bounced off of it just evenings after I first started it. The second boss was too big of a difficulty spike, and I just wasn't having that much fun. 2 months later, out of a sheer dearth of other games to play, I decided to give it another shot. After breaking through the wall of the aforementioned boss, all difficulty vanished and I began to think of Nioh not as a Souls-like, but as a Diablo clone. Between the monotonous enemies, the explosions of mostly meaningless loot around every turn, and unexciting, though sometimes very pretty maps, I was now content to turn the music off, throw on a podcast, and slash up enemies mindlessly without thinking about the world or the story. Though even then, the game has not been engaging. Mechanically speaking, I think Nioh has a lot of neat ideas and tools that are just not backed up by enough interesting and challenging enemy encounters for me to think or care about employing them.
Oh, pretty much where I'm at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gregory.
Yeah.
It should be noted, like, the Diablo comparisons, like, for the people who make it, or the people who are just like, I like it because I just put on a podcast and turned off my brain. Mm-hmm. Like, those games are, tend not to be my favorite. Like, I will play Dark Souls while listening to a podcast, but that's the exception for me. Like, actual Diablo, like a very mindless ARPG, is not my favorite thing.
Yeah.
And this only becomes mindless after, like, a lot of mastery, which is kind of cool. It is better than just, like, a literal hack and slash, just kind of click, 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 Diablo kind of thing. Or when I say better, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is more engaging than that. But that's not something that's a big draw for me, in the best of times, really.
For sure. Yeah. I think I agree with this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sean says via contact. I have mixed feelings about Nioh. I enjoyed how, at their best, the myriad of systems in Nioh could be brought together to prepare yourself for an encounter in a meaningful way. At the Vampire Lady, I was able to... I almost said Vampire Labia.
Oh, no.
Which is, like, that was not, on purpose or anything.
I was hoping you would just roll past that and not dive into it.
No, well, somebody heard me say labia and just, like, knew. And that's not, like, my pet name for labias, like, I swear, until now. At the Vampire Lady, I was able to change my equipment, switch to low stance with my axe, and unlock Amio magic that helped me resist paralysis and do more damage against her. Even though she was challenging, I enjoyed the act of developing a strategy and executing it successfully. Even though there are entirely too many systems and character progression is gated in frustrating ways, for example, skills locked behind boring dojo missions, that boss encounter kicked off several hours of really enjoying the reward I felt from approaching a situation tactically and seeing my efforts pay off. I also enjoyed the mission structure, as it felt easy to jump on, do a mission, and call it a night, although I dreaded going to the blacksmith and managing my inventory, which would end a session just as easily. However, I abruptly put the game down after beating that spider lady boss. The loot system, which I never clicked with, bogged me down. The increasing number of side missions popping up were overwhelming to me. I got some tea house system, which felt ridiculous given how many systems there already were. The story was not engaging, and I could not discern from the pacing how much game was left. I had spent 30 hours. I enjoyed my time with Nioh, and sometimes consider picking it back up, but I might just be satisfied with what I got out of it and leave it there. Nioh is exploding with a quantity of content and systems, but could have benefited from some more refinement. It just simply became too much, and I had to walk away from it. Also, I just looked up how far into the main mission I was. I was at 7 out of 19. Holy shit.
That's about where we got, actually.
This is very similar to my experience as well. And like, I don't think I really brought it up in the episode, but like the time I spent with it, it was ended up, I think previous to this, I quoted 10 hours. It was definitely more than that. I don't know what my actual play clock was, but I got to the same point and did most of the side stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't think it was quite 30, but that time was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Until like all of a sudden it instantly wasn't.
Right.
And I was just like, oh man, there are other games. Like sitting down to play this sounds really bad because again, nothing over the next corner, next hill.
Right. Yeah.
But that time I actually had fun with it. Like, I didn't pay anything for it. I borrowed it from a friend and like, I don't regret my time with it. I had fun,
No, and I bought it. Like I bought it at full price. I don't regret that either, not just because of the show, but like I got 20 solid hours out of it.
Yeah.
You just have to be comfortable saying you're finished with a game before it's done or done with a game before it's finished.
Yeah. And that is that's a feeling I've come to really, really appreciate.
Yeah.
That kind of like, this was fun for when it lasted, but I feel okay going away from it and closing the book on this.
Yeah.
Before it wants to be.
Yep.
Or before it would close it itself. But like that's something every time I'm able to do that, I feel pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna draw a line under this. Let's move on with my life.
Exactly. Let me take this and put it face down on the shelf.
Yep.
Connor writes, since Dark Souls 3, Souls games and Souls likes have ridden into my life hand in hand with a sharp interest spike followed by an equally sharp interest decline. The initial rush of a new aesthetic, new world, new enemies all coalesce into an endorphin rush that rarely fails to enthrall me, providing me between 10 and 15 hours of unmitigated bliss. Then it either starts to wane or it abruptly drops off. Let It Die never even got off the ground for me. Salt and Sanctuary held me for one playthrough, Hyperlight Drifter for a little longer than that. Nioh had me for half of its playtime, and then the feeling of playing a Souls game dissipated and was replaced by a Ninja Gaiden proxy, which I had no interest in at all. For me, it comes down to the ineffables. My tastes, when it boils down to design, are less refined than either of yours, so it's harder for me to articulate what it is about the experience that loses its grip the way Dark Souls and Bloodborne never have. The way you move, the way your hits impact your enemies, the way the world grows around you as you navigate through it. Souls has these things, and Nioh does not. It is a copy of a copy, losing the fine edges of its detail with every successive rendering. It has combat and difficulty and streaks of striking visual design, but few things beyond that. I liked it well enough and will finish it one day, but the things that struck me so keenly when I began playing it have blurred so much that I can no longer articulate what those things were.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely relate to that.
10, 15 hours. Also, like, length is a factor. The fact that this is, at first blush, an 80-hour game. If you're approaching it, I don't know what How Long to Beat says, but like that is what I've heard quoted. That's a long time for a Souls-like. Dark Souls 2 tops out at like 60 or 70, and that's way too long.
Yeah, that's that's a very, very long game. And I'm sure this is also something where you could beat it much quicker once you have that, that mastery too.
Of course, but acquiring that mastery is part of the process of beating it. Like it's still there.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. And it kind of goes down to that something I brought up in the main episode, which is that Nioh assumption that you were just going to want more and want to 100% this thing.
Yeah.
So it's made for like the audience, and that person totally exists. Like Mai said she played it for like 80 hours or whatever. I know people who put like hundreds of hours into this, like hundreds.
Somebody before said they put 200 in.
Yeah, it's totally made just for that. Like, that it's made to accommodate that. I think the issue is when it doesn't. It's not made to accommodate the person, who like ourselves or like Connor or anything, where it's like or Sean, where we need like a more noticeable sense of progress. Like, at that 20, 25, 30 hour mark, we want to be pretty close to the end of this.
Yeah.
Not 7/19ths the way through, not a third through it.
Yeah.
So like, it's just kind of built with this assumption, like, you are going to love this. You're going to love the entire thing, and you're going to love it for, dozens and dozens and dozens of hours.
Yeah.
And if you don't engage with those side systems, if you try to make a beeline, you're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah. And you're also not getting as much out of it too.
Yeah. You're not getting as much out of it. You're not getting the story. The story is told mostly through that stuff. You are, as much as I like I said, I didn't quit this because it was hard. I quit it because it was boring. I would not have been able to do like a boss rush with fighting multiple bosses at the same time without getting deeper with those side systems that I did. So that might be a case of that like Troika syndrome thing, where like the beginning supports a different playstyle that the end doesn't.
Yeah.
And that playstyle being like kind of a focused, like, I just want to do the main game. And maybe like I feel like there's something else recently. It was a little bit of Let It Die, but there's something else we talked about on one of the shows where that was a thing as well. And that's becoming like, it's not, I mean, I don't know if it's a trend, but I've noticed it more, like games that don't allow you to, to dabble inside stuff. Like, I really like a game where it's like the side stuff is the side stuff, but there's a place where it's like, How Long to Beat says this is a 27-hour game if I do everything. What if I just do the main story? Oh, like 18? That's great.
Yeah.
That sounds good to me. Oh, I was thinking about it in terms of Yakuza.
Because
we're recording that for Watch Out for Fireballs day after tomorrow. That's and that game does a pretty good job of like letting you just not do the side shit. Like I never there's a couple side things that were a little bit necessary, but like I didn't feel like I had to do it.
No, you can just find them as you stumble. Just do them as you stumble on them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really cool. And I feel like there's this it probably ties into that kind of like security insecurity thing with like whether a developer is comfortable allowing you to opt out of parts of their game that they did. And like Nioh starts out like that. Like, I don't even know what it would be like to opt into every system when you started the game. But it sounds like, if you're not doing those side things, if you're not really refining your weapons and everything, like I have no idea how I would do that end game stuff.
Yeah.
Like it just looks excruciating. Like it looks really, really hard.
Yeah. And there are any number of counter arguments specifically to the length things, that somebody would really enjoy having an ultra long game, because that happens to be the largest automobile they can afford. For any number of reasons, they want to have a game that they can live in and inhabit. It's just a different set of priorities. We're not saying that an overall length that is that high is necessarily a universal negative. It's a problem of pacing, and it's a problem with the way that it doles out motivation and systems. And also reward, for going forward.
Yeah, and it's also a preference thing.
Yeah.
So like whether it's actually worse or whether I know that I always will prefer a shorter game than that. Like I like a game that has the kind of replay value, but I'm never going to say like I'm looking for that 80-hour game.
Right.
That's always something I like a game in spite of.
Yeah.
Not because of. So thanks everybody for your responses. I said this jokingly a couple times during the episode. I'm not interested in talking about Nioh anymore. So please don't at me with if you listen to this and you disagree with me about something in this episode. That's going to be a mutable offense. So I'm done. But I do really appreciate everyone who came out, and thank you again to Mai for kind of shoring up our knowledge with this.
Yeah. I'm very much looking forward to going on to Hollow Knight.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. I believe there is still time to get your responses in for that. That is at Duckfeed.tv/contact.
Yeah. And then we're going to figure out exactly what we're going to do about responses for the Victory Lap season, because there are people who have Patreon rewards.
Yes.
For that are related to that. So for now, if you have things to say about that, like I think you can probably send them in, but keep it general and maybe wait until you hear an announcement when we ask for them.
Yeah.
And then be for sure to know what kind of context that is.
Yep. And just watch our social media on Twitter. That is at Duckfeed.tv, or the Bonfireside Chat Facebook page, facebook.com/bonfireside chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's about it.
Yeah.
We are no deleted scenes or anything.
Nope.
We just thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Umbasa.
Umbasa.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon